Well, hey, Grace Hill family. Hope you guys are doing good on this Wednesday afternoon. Hopefully you can grab some lunch or something and join us for our question of the week. We've taken a bit of a break from the question of the week YouTube show and podcast, just different travels and vacations and all kinds of things going on in the church. So we are excited to get back at it today. And we're going to try to keep a rhythm of about 2 question of the weeks a month. So excited about that. Joined by Nick Jones and Evan Snyder, pastors at Grace Hill Church. And obviously I'm Alan McCullough, pastor at Grace Hill Church as well. And today's question of the week is brought to you by Topo Chico.
Which apparently is way, way better than all the rest.
It is top-notch sparkling water. Sparkling water. Bottled at the source in Monterrey, Mexico. Yeah. Anyway.
Thank you, Topo.
Just kidding. We are not getting any sponsorship
endorsement deals
from Topo Chico.
That'd be sweet.
Excited about today's question. We're going to jump right into it. And obviously today's question is really in response to what we are seeing around our country, I'm sure around the world in some sense, when it comes to people, their feelings, thoughts about church coming back from the pandemic. And so the question today is this, is the church worth my time, my money, so just when it comes to giving to the church, and my effort, whether it's through serving or being involved in different programs or discipleship or whatever it is. Is the church worth my time, money, and effort? And Ev, I'll just kind of throw it to you for a second. Why are we asking this question? If you could maybe set that up for us a bit.
Yeah, I would say I would love to, but that wouldn't be true. It's been a hard time for even our local church. We've just had, trying to figure out who's still here and coming back. And, I know other churches in the area, same thing. It's been a season of a lot of change and sifting, and the pandemic really just created a rhythm that I don't think any of us expected or certainly weren't aware would happen. And I think it's that rhythm has then potentially become something that has turned into a kind of habits or just a new way of looking at how they view life and subsequently church. And where does that fit or not fit? What do I want from church or what do I not want from church? And so I think these questions are really legitimate, and a lot of people are asking, coming back and trying to figure out their new rhythms and routines. What do I want it now to look like? I think some of us have all felt like COVID was a good reset for a lot of things.
Oh yeah.
But that also includes our view of church and how have we understood it before and how that has played into where we find ourselves here today. And so just discussing that, I think, I've met with a lot of people. It's interesting hearing from other churches in the area too. Just I think really trying to wrestle with the reality of just all over the area, really, people trying to figure out what does it look like to be a part of church?
Yeah,
I need it?
People are asking this question about a lot of things: church, their jobs, where they live, education choices for their kids. All of that, I think, like you said, the pandemic just gave us all this 1 year plus disruption of our rhythms. Yeah. And now everything's being reevaluated. I've read things saying, 2021 is going to be the year of turnover in businesses because it's just a year where people are rethinking things and they're deciding, I want to do something different, or I want to move into a different area. Virtual, being able to work, telecommute, and all that stuff is causing people to go, wait, I don't have to live in this big city or in this expensive area. Let's go somewhere else. So it is obviously there's a shuffling occurring. There's a reevaluation of all kinds of things. And yes, church is definitely one of those things. Nick, kind of just in your conversations with people, have you been talking with people asking this question a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's been really just surprising to me to see how people have just felt kind of disconnected because of this and just how, gosh, during the pandemic, we did everything that we could, I think, to try to serve people digitally, but also to call them to continue to be involved as best they could. And yet, man, people are feeling alienated and kind of estranged. And it really is a hard thing when we've kind of been emerging now the last few months or so. And people are just not sure what to do. They're not sure how to prioritize things. And I think it's scary with something like this because you really see, I think, maybe where people's tightly held beliefs were. And this type of thing kind of just aggravates that and brings things kind of bubbling to the surface in terms of, oh man, maybe committing to serve in a church for a certain amount of time or frequency or whatever is really hard. And maybe that's not something I feel like I want to do right now. Or maybe the way I would have defined like what the church is or community and being a part of a church maybe looks really different now and based on kind of what I've seen. And so I think it's forcing a lot of people to kind of re-examine and redefine what they believe and what they've experienced and what their experience of church has specifically been and looked like. And everybody's just asking questions. And so I think that's where we find ourselves.
As I look back on the pandemic and how we at Grace Hill Church responded to that, in many ways, I'm proud of how we were able to pivot to some digital tools and platforms and get some things going. And at the same time, one of the things I look back and I know hindsight's 2020, that we were always kind of operating as if we were almost out of the pandemic. I felt like.
Totally. And I think we secretly hoped and wanted that.
Of course, so everything, all of our decisions, I felt like were really short term in nature, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do this for the next 4 weeks, then we'll see where we're at, and hopefully we're kind of coming out. We did that over and over again. And so one of the things as I look back on it, and I look back on our church, is one of the things I regret in hindsight is not acting quickly. We went so hard at digital, which I thought was a good thing, not a bad thing at all. I wish we worked harder on keeping people connected because this was going to be a long haul. And we weren't acting as if this was going to be a long haul. We acted as if, all right, we got to hunker down until we get out of this and we'll get out of it soon. And I think one of the things that I've learned about our church, I would say a weakness in our church, and this isn't criticizing anyone, I just think kind of, you look back where we were a young church, is I don't know if our church was as connected to each other relationally as we thought it was. And as you just said, I think when the pandemic hit, it disrupts things. And I think we realized, well, we're not as connected, or at least relationally strong as we thought we were.
Absolutely. And it reveals the fact that Sunday, in a lot of ways, and I feel bad saying this, but Sunday almost becomes like a crutch where, I see him on Sunday, we have our conversation in the lobby, and I did church. There we go. We're good. But then you remove that from the equation, for better or for worse, to your point of, man, should we have done digital? And of course we should have, but the exact kind of ratio of how we do that. But yeah, I mean, it's like you get into it and you realize, gosh, it's just really hard.
Yeah.
So
and so I think one of the things that as people are asking this question, I think one of the things that us as church leaders and other churches can be doing in humility is going, okay, what can we learn, or what can we think about when it comes to church about, okay, are people asking these questions about church because we've kind of built a consumeristic type culture or pattern in the church where it's, come, receive. Yes, we have relationships and we know people within the church, but is the pandemic helping to expose maybe those relationships and connections just weren't as deep and as strong, maybe. And so when we're reemerging after 18 months, that relationship and that connection isn't the magnet that's drawing people back in, but they actually are asking legitimate questions about, man, do I want to keep investing time? Do I want to get back to that rhythm of investing time every week to this and giving and all of these things?
And I think I would just tack onto that as well, and I'd love to hear from Evan, but just, I think we feel the spiritual effects of just not gathering quite as much. Man, you have to take into account and remember the fact that when the church body gathers, there is something spiritual that Jesus intended for his church that is at work and at play and that is binding us together. And when we're not doing that, certainly in the way that we were, there's a breaking that occurs. And I think we then subsequently see, because I saw it myself, you see us kind of descending to this place of apathy or, man, even sin. If it's left unchecked and you kind of, all right, well, yeah, we'll stay home. It's not that big of a deal. And kind of you drift and you descend further and further apart in a way. And it just puts such an important emphasis for me personally as we're seeing this and, in hindsight, we have to gather, or if we're not physically gathering, what does it look like to what you said, foster that community?
Sure.
And those connections.
Ed, what is your thought to this idea of maybe is some of the catalyst of a question like this, even if it's a subconscious realization, that I don't know if I'm known at my church. I don't know. Maybe the connections and relationships just weren't as strong as I thought they were.
Yeah, it's a really tough question, and I can only answer that in response to like people that I've met with, just people within our church and struggles with that, and my own experience with that. I think we also don't want to miss the fact that on top of that pandemic and being disconnected physically from one another, we also had an unbelievably tumultuous time just culturally. And then you throw that on top of disconnected relationships. I think we see the fruit of that bearing where there is a massive sifting happening within the church, and there's division in the church in the United States, and evangelicalism. Like we're not doing well with our differences with each other.
Yeah.
So I think you throw that on top of that, and we've got a mess, right? I think this is one of the things I'm wrestling with, and I think would want to encourage our people who might be listening to this and might be feeling really disconnected, or maybe even looking at us and feeling like we've let them down, and in some ways, and we have. I'm sure of that. I know, I think we always can see things that we wish we could have done, and I think we always want to try to encourage our people to care for one another because we're just three people. But here's one of the things I think. I think that there is a view of relationships at times that can view our weaknesses and our struggles and our challenges with each other as liabilities. And
something to be avoided.
Something that's bad.
Yeah.
And so I now need to rethink, because I don't agree with you, Nick, on X. That so just with politics or with cultural views of things, and
sure.
And because of that, now you and I have a fundamental ideological difference, and that can't be tenable in the same spot anymore. Sure. Or and I think I'm realizing, even in my own life, in my own family, and just certain situations like that has become kind of a dividing line. And I think instead of seeing those challenges and struggles as liabilities, wouldn't the Bible give us a view to say,
sure,
this is the opportunity for the gospel itself to be lived out? Like, the beauty of what the gospel isn't that we are all in agreement with each other on things, or isn't that we see life all the same way. It literally says that you have Christ, and that's it.
Sure.
And so then from that you can build. And I just think, I'm trying to learn, how can I look at my differences with brothers and sisters who hold different views on some things that have affected relationships or can affect, or even in my own heart, that I can go, how on earth could that person think X or Y?
Sure.
Well, then I start to make a decision to go and like, well, they're not safe, or I can't, or if they don't think that, then how could they possibly believe the Bible is in this way? They're I can go in a really bad spot quick. And instead of viewing that as an asset that God has given to me and that person, or you and me, Nick, if we're having a very different view on whatever, to say, man, now I can like engage in a conversation that I would never have the opportunity to have done before. And even like you preached last week, to realize, man, the gospel doesn't breed uniformity, it breeds unity.
Sure.
So that's a long-winded thing. I just know because I've sat with people and people in tears, and even myself in tears with them, of hearing the hurt of feeling disconnected and legitimately feeling that way. I think, realizing I think the Lord does have something really intentional about the messiness of our church experience.
So would you say that there is maybe an intentionality on God's part for church to be, at least relationally, messy, for it to be challenging, maybe for it to be, I'm thinking, as Jesus formed his crew of disciples, you know what I mean? He put Peter the zealot and Matthew the tax collector in the same crew, you know what I mean? Knowing there's going to be
friction,
unbelievable friction there, ideological friction, he on purpose walked those guys through Samaria, you know what I mean? And so he was, you can even see in his own disciples in the group that he was forming, which would go to lead the church. He was intentionally putting relationally messy contexts and situations together.
Well, and very different. Very, very, very much. And listen, the three of us know the book of Ephesians well, and maybe many of the people listening. Paul writes in Ephesians that what's Jesus doing to the church as his bride? He's washing her, washing her clean through the word, by the word.
And he's building.
And what is it? What that also then means for us as we read that text is to go like the inherent beauty in ourselves is not there, right? It's not. Jesus gives that to us. So the idea that we would think that the church or that one another is not messy, again, not that we don't know it. Of course, we'll all agree. Yeah, of course we're messy. But in the midst of that struggle, as the church gathered together as a people united in Christ, to go, man, in that messiness, that God is using that, to your point, and he's saying, I am washing her clean. I am making her clean. And I think one of the ways that is occurring is as his people model grace and forgiveness to each other. That they model that to each other. And instead, I think right now, I'm not a prophet. I have no idea. But this sifting in my own view of other churches and how they are approaching different topics, and my frustration that can well up deep inside of me is going, I can see the very thing play out. And like, man, is there brotherly love for those people who see things different? And then is that an opportunity? And is that an asset rather than a liability? And yet I think we see everything right now as like, if we don't line up, then it's time to break, time to find everyone else, find the place where everything lines up, right? And yet the picture we get from the scriptures looks quite different. So I would agree with that. I think the Lord is very intentional in his. I think the other thing, I don't think he's ashamed to show the messiness of his people, of his bride.
Sure.
And yet how much he cherishes her and loves her and is washing her clean.
Yeah.
Well, especially because he receives the glory from, to your point, and the work that he does and making her clean.
So the question is, okay, is the church worth my time, money, and effort? And I think one of the things we're talking about here is this idea of, well, we're talking about a very specific definition here of church, right? Where it's a body of people, believers in Jesus, who are different. Right. There's diversity of a lot of things there, right? Diversity of opinion and thought and in life stage and a number of things. But they're united around Christ, and they kind of they're connected to one another. They're committed to one another as they seek to grow, love their neighbors, and all of those things. So in a sense, that is worth your time, money, and effort, and that's worth the relational effort to understand and to show that brotherly love. We're coming kind of close to our time here, so I just want to end it with this question, because there's a million different places we could take this. But I really want to end it with this question, guys. We are the three pastors of Grace Hill Church. How can we do a better job at leading our church to be like that? How can we, and how can we do a better job, or how can we lead in such a way where we have a church that embraces the messiness of relationship and, living in a very interesting time culturally. Just curious. Wanted to throw that. I know I did not prepare you for that question. That's kind of intentional.
Man, I'll just speak real quick. I feel like I've seen a lot of fruit when, and I feel like I've said this a few times even in this forum for the question of the week, but man, when people are willing to have conversations and to go to one another, that almost always, just that act in and of itself tends to smooth out a lot of wrinkles. When people are quick to humble themselves and to say, hey, I'm just going to go, hey man, what do you, like what's going on here? What do you think about this? Or help me to understand your position or where you're coming from. That simple, not complicated, but sometimes scary act in and of itself can lead to a lot of just good conversation, because then you can hear where people are coming from. I've experienced that even a few times in the last 6 months with Grace Hill, and even in groups where I've felt a specific way towards maybe something that somebody said, where it's like, oh gosh, what's going on there? And I've addressed it, and it's like, okay, yeah, man, that's really hard what you just said, and it's helpful for me to see it. And so I just always am such a big proponent of, if there's a problem, man, just go have a conversation. And it might not get 100% resolved, but at least you'll be able to hear each other's kind of viewpoints and kind of proceed from there, hopefully in a godly way. And so having a conversation is a big first step that can be helpful.
Yeah, Nick, I think that's just, I think, Alan, one area specifically for me personally, just as a pastor at Grace Hill, is I think just something that kind of, just as you were asking the question, I was like, Lord, what is one of them? I feel like there's probably a lot. My wife would probably be able to give the list way quicker than I could, but I think one of them is, where it's like, hey, let your reasonableness be known to all. And so I think there's an aspect of that for me. There's some humility of being able to listen better.
All of us.
Give benefit of the doubt.
I think, and I think, man, if I'm just being, I'm going to be really honest. I think sometimes it's like, man, I know my Bible pretty well. And I think there's times for me where it can be very easy to think that I know something better. And I just need to wait to be able to say something versus really take the time to listen and to let that sit versus just kind of go, I already know the context of that. I can, let me, and I think, man, as pastors, like, I'm sure all of us struggle with that, not just us three, but I think, man, just some reasonableness to grow in and not assume some things at times. I think that's an area where I would love to grow and become better at shepherding in that way. And I think I also want that from the standpoint of, like, if there's people who are watching, even maybe someone from Grace Hill who's like has some struggles and they just, for whatever reason, they don't feel comfortable to come and say something to me or to you or to you, like,
which is reality.
And we can say, please come to us, but I think there's just things that I'm not aware of that can probably make someone not feel comfortable to do that. I want that to be different, and so, like you said, Nick, I agree with you. I think we need to model well just the very thing that we say that we want to call others to, so there's a huge, not onus, but just, we're just as in need of being under the preached word that we preach or listen to as anyone else, and subject to the criticisms and care of other people. So I would just say those two things: reasonableness and being approachable, to be able to come and say, like, I may not know the Bible as well, but that doesn't mean you don't have a legitimate concern or struggle or see something that I don't see, know.
I'll co-sign on both of those, willingness to have conversation, and just having that reasonableness. One that comes to mind, I have another, I'm going to give two, but the one that comes to mind is similar to yours, Evan. I just think of transparency. We as leaders aren't special. Yes, we've been called by the Lord to lead, and He's certainly equipped, allowed us to be equipped in particular ways and gifted us in particular ways in order to do that. But it doesn't mean that we also don't struggle with the messiness of relationship, and it doesn't mean that we don't always get it right. And so I think also just willingness to hear when our actions, our words, or things like that, how they impact people, and having the transparency to bring people into that as well, and kind of in a sense embrace the messiness that is a group of people trying to stick together and love Jesus together and reach our neighbors and do all those things, and that can be difficult. We were just talking before, and I was talking about, Kim and I just celebrated 12 years of marriage. You guys are what, 8, you said, and you're going on 15 here, is that right? And so, we all know that in marriage is not easy. When you talk about messiness of relationship, it's not easy. But if you work at it, if you're committed to one another, if you have two people who are humble and willing to own their mistakes and grow and all those, man, you build something amazing.
Beautiful.
You know what I mean?
I don't think you disagree with it. I would just point out this, and I think I can speak for Stacy and I. I actually think the beauty of what marriage represents, obviously, is Jesus' love for the church. It's clearly Jesus is the only one that really brings something to the table, right? And so in marriage, it's like, I don't necessarily think I'm all that humble. And so I think what's great is when I get to see Stacy, in spite of my brutishness, in spite of my hard-headed, in spite of my ego of going, I know, or I know better. Man, I think to your point, even where you preached this week of going like, man, she still sticks with me. Like she chose, I'm not going to leave in spite of that. When it's like, so easy to just peace out with that stuff. Like I'm a snot sometimes. Like I'm a real snot. And then in that, when she displays like kindness, it helps me go back and go, man, Stacey, I blew it. And she's like, yeah. Oh, I know. And I just think, man, I just only say that because I think sometimes it's not, and I know you don't mean, I didn't mean to sidetrack you on that. I just know I don't come into it in my relationship. Oftentimes it's not with humility. It's still the reality of that, the commitment, the covenant, like that's what holds, not it's in spite of me, actually.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? I don't mean to like,
absolutely.
And so I just think that's what's beautiful. And so I just think for our people where it's like, I think we all just, I know we're in this season as the pruning's happening, the sifting's happening. And I know, like, as we're just praying, like, Lord, what is Grace Cell supposed to look like and be? And we don't know what the next few months look like. And there's sifting happening in our own church. And it's just like, just being called back to the very simple reality of going, God, we want to be faithful to people that are seeking to be fully committed to you, who have promised to never leave us. And we want to do our best to try to model that.
Right.
And so that's why the church is worth time and money and exhaustion and frustration and yet going and staying, because I think we have a God who does not ever leave us. Yeah. And it's like,
that's what he did for us.
So sorry, I just kind of just took that, but I just think that's the beauty of that, I think.
Yeah. I'm into that, and you know, the second answer I would give to that, just how we could lead better in that, and we'll just end on this is, I think that some of the lessons we need to learn from the pandemic are these things that we're saying, is that in a church, it is our relationship with God and our relationship with one another that is primary, right? It's our relationship with God and sitting under his word and learning his word and then how that unites us together as the body under this word that we believe, and also this mission that we believe God has given us. And so one of the things that I feel very committed to, and we've obviously all talked about this, and I know you guys do too, is we need to have a mission and a vision in the church where that is what we're aiming at. Where we are actually putting resources, time, effort towards creating strong relationship and connection with people, both one another and our neighbors. And I think so much of church prior, and I would even say Grace Hill, we could fall into this as well, has been trying to curate a particular kind of experience. You know what I mean? That's kind of up to par with, the other churches around us. And that's not to say, oh, we're going to, do Sundays differently or things like that.
An experience of church.
But how are we directing our energy towards being a kind of church where you really can be known, where people really know you, and you really are pursuing Jesus together in deep ways, where our neighbors come in and they go, man, I can really be known here. Those are the kinds of things. And obviously those are things that, even Grace Hill coming this September, we're going to be recasting vision for the church. What does the church look like in the future? And these are the things that are shaping the answer to that question. And I think that's a big thing for us as we move forward and we ask, what does this church look like? What is it going to look like to serve with one another, alongside of one another for our neighbors moving forward?
Right on.
So, all right, we'll call it there. Good discussion. Hey, join us in 2 weeks. So that would be when? When's 2 weeks?
Who knows?
I don't even know.
25th?
No, that's a Sunday. It's 26, 27. It'd be 28th. July 28th, I believe. So on that Wednesday, the question of the week is going to be this: is the future of the church online?
Oh gosh.
So that's very much related to obviously the discussion that we had today.
Well, into the question, man, a lot of people think, it is. It's very debated. Yeah.
So
a lot of
is that
opinions
what
there.
we believe? You'll have to wait 2 weeks to find out. But obviously I think you probably know what our answer is to that question. But in 2 weeks, we are gonna really discuss that. I'm excited because Justin Winters is gonna come on and he's gonna give his opinion on it, and but really to wrestle with that question, because obviously everything has gone virtual. Those are good, beneficial tools to use. So how do we wrestle with that? What does that look like in the church? That's what we'll tackle 2 weeks from now. And so, family, thank you so much for joining us today. And if anyone else, if you have joined us, you're not part of Grace Hill, just invite you to check us out. You can go to our website, gracehillchurch.com, visit us on a Sunday. You can find all of the info about that on our website. And we'll be back in 2 weeks to answer, is the future of the church online? Love you guys. We'll see you soon.